You ready, Gabby? Okay, say when. I think a special effects designer for theater does something that's maybe slightly different than what they do for other entertainment medias. So for theater, I think that I am taking a script in the most ideal way, and I'm transferring that information into an idea and a design that fits into that storytelling in a way that also incorporates the actor, the directing, often sound, often lighting, like we're all just sort of working together in a way that does happen, of course, in all the industries, but in this way we have to plan it way in advance. I worked on a show recently, Teeth the Musical. That has a lot of fire in it as well. It's a different kind of fire than this. That's much more like rock and roll punctuating fire. However, I mean, a Ring of Fire is pretty rock and roll. All of this becomes for me about how close and how safe you can be. So like, I feel pretty comfortable. You know, I'm like 2 feet from fire, but in the reality of shows like Teeth, all those actors are actually pretty far away. We work really hard to block them absolutely within inches so that we know exactly how far away they are from all the different flame moments. And there are cameras everywhere looking at overhead shots, side shots of seeing where those actors are in association with all of that fire, which is how we keep everyone safe.
So ungird your loins. Eat the fruit. Hands up for Father God.
Whoa.
I would do 5. Let's get behind that. Working in theater was my side job when I went to grad school for communications. So I didn't study theater at all, and I worked backstage anywhere I could because I was a terrible waiter. At that time, that was in the early and mid 90s, there was a lot of like really weird experimental theater that probably was bad, but I loved it so much. And there was a lot of the world of like improv, Chicago improv. There were a lot of like young actors at the time who were like leaving improv and making their own plays that were really strange. And I just fell in love with a lot of that really avant-garde-ish theater and like sort of punk-ish theater with no money. And I had a couple of other friends from New York. I'm from New York originally, and we decided that we wanted to like make our own company and make our own theater in a safe environment. I started to understand how to talk to designers. I had started to understand how props were, and I'm good at talking and good at storytelling and good at taking people's information and processing it into like, what do you need on stage? I have a certain process that I like to use that starts with conversation with director and the other designers so that we all sort of understand the rules of the stage, meaning what are the parameters of the set? How big is it? Can we do, what space do we have to do these moments? And then right after that, I actually start with coming up with some low-tech versions of effects that I think are interesting. And I usually set them up and do a ideally in-person demo. Now we can do some demos on video and send them around. All right, I'm smoking a cigarette. Happy Halloween. Time to shave. 3, 2, 1. But ideally, people are coming to a space to be like, okay, here's 3 versions of rain, right? Here it is in a straight line that can be lit very beautifully and is very presentational. Here's one that gets the actors all soaked. Here's one that represents rain, but isn't really going to make the stage that wet. Like, we come up with a bunch of different ways and show them and get feedback, because often describing a special effect is just not good enough, and showing a YouTube video of something else is also just not quite good enough in the case of like live in-person theater. So usually I try and set up like some workshops, some demo time with creative team, sometimes with actors. On really great projects, we might play for 3 days with actors and choreographers or directors or a fight choreographer, or, you know, all design team that is necessary. And those are usually the biggest successes. I feel like very blessed and lucky because I have access to all the kinds of creative parts and pieces that my job might need. So we just have like bins and bins and bins of every kind of like plumbing part and tubing and electrical pieces, so that we can make things literally. Like, we have hose connectors, so you could build a hose of any length that would fit in a stage. We have pieces that are brass, so they don't light on fire. And the areas are very sort of funny. So like, this is all blood making gags. So we have like just all, like, I have how to make blood rigs. I have, let's see, squib effects double shot. So that would be like 2 shots. Let's open it and find out what it is. So, oh yeah, this is a rig. We actually use this in Oklahoma, the recent Oklahoma exclamation point. And one of the performers wore this giant thing on their lower back, strapped around them. And then they triggered, there's like a, here, like to lay it out, there's this fun thing, you'd wear it on your back. And then the trigger is like in their sleeve, and we rig this tube to their chest so that when they're shot, they hit the button on cue, blood comes out of here. But like, I feel really lucky that when someone calls and says, hey, I need a gunshot moment or a blood moment, I'm like, oh yeah, I have this thing that I can just show up with and show you how to use. The question about blood design to me is always like, how does it get on stage? How does it happen? And does it even need to leave the stage? Or like, and also, can we get it on the floor? What happens if it gets on the floor? How does the rest of the show happen? Most blood is too thick. We are going to thin the blood, which is something that we do on lots of shows. It needs to be at a certain thickness. I'm going to do a eyeball measurement, so not a massive measurement, just, you know, using my eye. We're just going to thin that out so that it's like, I think it's like 20% water, you know, something like that. 80% blood, 20% water, just to get it thinner. Simple tricks at home. This is an aspirator, tiny, tiny turkey baster, right? So I have blood in this now. This is something you can just do for anyone in like a small show that might have a blood moment. You fill up your aspirator, you can hide it around. Blood does not come out until you squeeze it, and then blood comes out. We want this bloody impact to happen, but in the scope of the play, this is like 1 second, half a second, but a lot of story has to happen in that 1 second, and the audience needs to put a bunch of invisible dots together to buy it. So it's sort of, in a bigger picture, it's like on stage, if there's a gunshot and then someone gets shot, there is nothing in between. I'm doing this and I'm going, ugh. But the timing of all of it and the sound effect and the blood that you might see all fill in the middle. And that's the same thing kind of with violence. And a lot of stuff that I do is like, you're not actually seeing everything that that your brain might fill in. It's 16 grams. It would inflate a bike tire very, very quickly. It gets super cold when it's released, so most of them have these protective cases. I would always use a protective case. I've done a fancy rig of getting a tube on there, but others, there's a lot of ways to get this on there. Gabby used a syringe, like a glue syringe. You have to have an air gap to get it in there. There you go. So now, I've got my little bike pump filled with blood. This is super low tech. This can be anywhere. You can hide it on your body. You can have a tube. We play with color a lot because lights can change the color of it. And I try not to say like, hey, could you not use that blue light because it's wrecking my blood. I try and change the blood color so it works with the light. Thickness and thinness. I just did a test with Andy Carl, who has a very big blood moment, and we like had 3 tubs of blood with different thicknesses and like made him work with the 3 types of blood, and we were like, okay, 50% water, 50% blood is the mix. 1/4 water, 3/4 blood is too thick, it doesn't look right. So there is a little bit of like playing with blood that way. So I would have this device hidden in a prop, hidden in a wall. I would have this on my person. There's so many different ways to use it, but I think this is like a reaction shot. So here, I'll hide it. So if I were standing here and I might have some violence done to me, then I would be like, oh my God, 3, 2, 1. I didn't do any acting because it's violent, but yes, I'm a big proponent of don't see blood in the air, but see it on the wall, see it on a person. That's how you tell that story. So this is a very exciting, very low-tech blood cannon. I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I don't know whether that's unique to me. I don't think it is, but it is like an important part of this strange job. Like I know just enough plumbing to be like dangerous at plumbing. I know a little bit about electricity. I know a little bit about directing and acting. I know enough. I know about upholstery and sewing. Some of that came from props because I think that props people are, to me in theater, they have to know a little bit of everything, and I did have to learn a lot of that stuff. But also, I have a system brain, so I can sort of understand like how things might work in a certain order. And that just feels like a thing that I don't know that I learned it. I just sort of, my hands know how to do certain things and I've attributed to it, but like, I know how to put together a system that says there's a tank of water here and it has to go through these 10 steps and then it looks like rain. Rain. We're raining. Theater rain. This is theater rain. Turn it off. The magic of theater rain is you get to decide when it starts and stops. Rain on stage is so hard and so satisfyingly effective. The part that's hard is not always making water fall from above, but making water not go anywhere that you don't want it to go after it hits the stage. And that is like just a massive design challenge that I think is, when successful, is just the most satisfying and successful part of it. that no one sees. They all see this and it's beautiful, it's raining, but the fact that there's no water on stage and you can continue with your show is just, to me, the challenge and the magic. And you can see that in lots of different shows from this past season, from The Notebook to The Outsiders. I mean, rain is just amazing. And you spend so much time talking about where does the rain go. There are tanks in the basement of the Jacobs that collect all the Outsiders' rain every night. What happens when it rains? So the rain is completely electronically cueable from a light board. The technology, we have a tank of clean water in the basement. We have pumps and heaters and filters to make sure that the water is clean and filtered. We have and heated to the correct temperature, which I think it falls from the sky at like 104 or 3 degrees. And by the time it hits their bodies, it's probably in the 90s, because water falling through the air will drop temperature because of physics. And then they fight in the rain. But the amazing part is that we have this dirt-ish floor in The Outsiders, that it was entirely designed around the rain. So the water pours through that dirt, which is actually a rubber or plastic, it's a rubber, EPDM. It's like playground stuff. And it doesn't in any way absorb water, and the water passes through that, through layers and layers of kind of foamy filter so they can dance on it, into like a sub-troughs that allow the water to all drain like a roof to one side and down into what we call a dirty water tank. How do I know that something is working? I mean, I usually come up with 2 to 3 versions of a story point that I might be demoing or doing R&D for production, and I'll have one that's my favorite that I'll like. I'll have one that's like maybe a little bit more subtle, and one that's maybe very heavy-handed, and then I show it to people. I mean, that's how you know how theater works. So then you just show it to the director, show it to the other designers, and that feedback is what sort of answers the question. We're all failing all the time. Special effects is very much about like, that didn't work, sometimes in front of people. I've always been very confident about like being okay with that. And so, that to me is the real fun, that early stage when there aren't this big consequences of like, oh my God, that didn't work in front of a live audience. But if it doesn't work in front of like 10 people, you just sort of go, okay, that's great. We learned that that's terrible. Let's try this thing. So that to me is really the joy. I love this because it's a great finale, button to a number. Gabby, count me in.
Firing in 3, 2, 1, fire.
Okay, that felt timed.
Yeah.
Yay.